Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Man, okay. Can I just say something? I totally screwed that up. I don't know why. But let's try this again. That was clearly the wrong opening video for the date and all that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to fix it. And I'm going to cut out this mistaken beginning. And I hope you will all bear with me as I do so. So let's try this again together, shall we?
Observations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema, and, well, sci-fi. And, of course, your evangelist of the imagination, and your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett. And once again, yes, that's true. I am robcasting at you. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode 699, the show about something, coming at you, you imagination connoisseurs, and all of you members of the Post-Geek Singularity. It is good to see you on the first day of June. My God, the 6th month of the year. This is the last month of the first half of 2021. My God, somebody owes me a year and a half of my life. But we're all here. We're here together, and it's fantastic. And, you know, I always love it when someone sends me a topic that I have to tell you, I wasn't going to do a show today. I was depressed. I couldn't find a topic. I'm like, I have nothing to talk about. I mean, yes, I could talk about the fact that AMC has enough money to potentially acquire the ArcLight chain and the Pacific Theaters chain here in LA, which means the theaters that I've been going to might reopen. They won't quite be the same, but they might reopen, and that would be a very good thing. So maybe that could happen. That could be something to talk about. We can also talk about how the Alamo Drafthouse is emerging from bankruptcy and they'll be able to open more theaters. That's something we could talk about. But we did. We talked about those things on the John Campea show, and I figured, I didn't have a subject. But leave it to one of you, one of the foundational members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. That's right, Stubble McShave tweeted an article to me that I was unaware of that was published yesterday, and I particularly liked it because for those of you who might not know, screenwriter and novelist William Goldman wrote a book called Adventures in the Screen Trade. I read when it first came out. It was essential to anybody. It was really the book that made me want to work in Hollywood. I don't know what that says about me, but it was a great book. And one of the adages that Mr. Goldman said, William Goldman wrote things like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and he wrote The Princess Bride, both the novel it was based on and the screenplay. He was one of the great legendary screenwriters of the 70s and the 80s, and he said famously, no one knows anything in Hollywood, and I believe this to be true. And now Hollywood, being more risk-averse than ever, is relying on all kinds of, indicators to decide what stories should we make into movies. And the danger of that is, here's the one thing. Do you know what the one thing people want when they go see a movie or watch a TV series? They want a good story. That's it. And a good story is usually unique to the author who wrote it, the screenwriter in this case, or if it's based on a novel, the screenwriter's translation of the original author's work. But everybody wants a great story, and yet they also want to be risk-averse. Well, sometimes those two things don't go hand in hand. Great stories can be difficult. They don't provide easy answers or give everybody what they want. And the idea is that people that live in the hallowed halls of the studio system, they want to give people what they want. They want to be as risk-averse as possible, because when you're spending $100 or $200 million nowadays, because studios really aren't making movies in the 30, 40, $50 million range much anymore, which is what their bread and butter used to be. Now everyone's swinging for the fences when before it was okay just to get a base hit. So sometimes we're getting stories that seem manufactured, and I think we're gonna get more of that as we move along. However, if you watch something like Mayor of Easttown, which I really enjoyed, the new miniseries, the 7-episode miniseries on HBO starring Kate Winslet, and I love those kinds of mystery stories. I read a lot of detective fiction. I really liked it. Was it perfect? No, but I would give it a solid 8. And Kate Winslet's performance was one of the most immersive I've seen in a while. She's going to win the Emmy. You can take that to the bank. I can't imagine seeing a better performance than what she gave in Mayor of Easttown. Just stunning. But, that was a satisfying story. Took me to a place I hadn't been, showed me a life that I wasn't very aware of, and really enjoyed it. And I was engrossed. I got obsessed. We started it on Saturday, binged the whole thing. I wanted to get it done so we could watch the episode, the final episode on Sunday night at 7 o'clock, so it wasn't spoiled for me, which we did. Our HBO did not go out. We were able to thankfully watch the show, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, what was great about it was just a solid story. I was engrossed, and that's what people want from their storytelling. I think that's all that we want from stories. We want our stories to be great stories that hopefully affect us in some way, and like all the great stories do. Well, there's a little article here that I thought was great and timely, and that is that screenplays are stories, not formulas. This was written by Scott Myers on the website Into the Story. I guess it's on the blacklist.com. But I really like this, and I wanted to share it with you because Stubble shared it with me, and I figured, why not pass it along to you? Here's the quote. Here's the great William Goldman quote. "Nobody knows anything. Not one person in the entire motion picture field knows for a certainty what's going to work, except Kevin Feige." The late, great William Goldman, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Marathon Man, The Princess Bride, Misery, famously wrote, "Screenplays are structure." That is true in a tangible sense because at some point a script becomes a blueprint for the production of a movie. In a very real way, everything hangs on the structure of the narrative. How one scene flows to the next, how the beginning is shaped, how the middle is crafted, how the ending plays out. Even the designations of scenes, exterior, interior, day, night, shape the nature of a film coming to life. So Goldman's assertion is true. It is also problematic. Somewhere along the line, screenplay structure started to become routinized. In part, this is because a certain segment of the screenwriting guru cast generated some takes on what that structure is supposed to look like. Each with their own system where the key plot point ought to land between these pages and that major plot point needs to hit between those pages. A script need X amount of acts, sequences, beats, etc. Over time, structure was reduced to paradigm. Paradigm transmogrified into formula. And that contributed to perhaps the most common complaint among those in Hollywood movie development arenas forging through mounds of submissions. Formulaic scripts. As screenwriter David Seltzer, who wrote The Omen and Punchline, has said, if you go in with formula, you come out with formula. This approach may have worked in the 80s and 90s with Hollywood churning out one high-concept movie after another, but the inherent problem with a formula is that it eventually wears out its welcome. Why? Because the audience knows a formula well enough. They can anticipate precisely where a movie is heading, and that eviscerates almost any possibility for genuine entertainment. Little wonder that contemporary audiences, their minds cluttered with tropes, memes, and patterns, are looking for something different. By and large, happy endings still, but how the story gets from fade in to fade out that needs to be a rocking ride of twists and turns, known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Right there is the key. Did you catch it? The one word that is a writer's salvation when it comes to formula. Story. A story roils with potential to go anywhere and do anything. Its characters are active, sentient beings who live in the moment and can make any myriad of choices. If you create multi-dimensional characters, conflicted, confused, driven, uncertain, and all the rest, they will resist formula because they are living, dynamic entities who can surprise us. When a story plays against type and expectations, that's when a writer is on the path toward a great screenplay. Again, from David Seltzer, the whole thrill of being a writer is to do a prototype every time out. And you can do it. Something that nobody ever wrote before. A prototype every time out. In other words, meet the story on its terms. Allow it to breathe. Enable it to go where it needs to go. Not cram it into some sort of predetermined formula. I understand this desire to reduce the mysteries of a story to something manageable. A nice little system to speed our way through the writing process. An approach we can duplicate time after time to ensure we churn out scripts in an efficient and timely manner. But efficiency and timeliness, and most of all formula, do not sell a script. Rather, a distinctive concept, compelling characters, and a narrative that moves in unforeseen and unexpected ways, those are the keys to crafting a marketable script. So as you wander through the noisy spectrum of people pitching you this or that screenplay paradigm or methodology, be sure to remember one essential fact. Screenplays are stories and not formulas. Now, I read this article, this little piece, and I both agree and disagree with that. Mostly because you don't have an unlimited time to tell your story. You're working with ultimately a paradigm. If you're writing a movie is essentially between 90 minutes and 2 hours. So your screenplay is going to be between 90 pages and 120 pages because the common wisdom, the way it works, is most screenplays are considered a minute a page. That doesn't always hold true, but for the most part, it's a pretty good indicator. And in my experience, unless you're making an action scene or something where things could stretch out or change, it works pretty well. So there is ultimately a paradigm, and that paradigm is time. So you're still working in the framework of time. And I think when you're working in a 90-minute or 2-hour time period, there is a certain structure that you do sort of need to follow, because if you don't, you will run out of runway. And then your story will end up being too long, your screenplay will end up being too long. And that paradigm, you still should work within that paradigm. But that's not to say that, when you read Sid Field or you read Blake Snyder's Save the Cat or any number of screenplay books, they'll always tell you that you introduce your characters and by page 10 there should be some inciting incident, and then you set up over the first act the problem that the script has for the protagonist and antagonist or whatever, and then you've got your second act, and then the third act you resolve whatever the problem is after you've spent the time amping up that problem in the second act. So, but beyond that, a story should define what it is you're going to be showing to an audience. And you want to make that story a good story. It's important that the story is a good story. And I think then all bets are off. But we all know good stories and we all know bad stories. I mean, as a matter of fact, I've talked about this a lot. I read screenplays for years in the 90s. And what was really interesting when somebody would come up with a successful formula, call it the buddy cop movie, whether it was, or the buddy, not, I called it buddy cop, but it was basically the protagonist and the buddy antagonist is call it what you will. 48 Hours, Midnight Run, movies like that. And they worked because you had Lethal Weapon, because you had the interplay between these two characters. And that's what the script hung on, was their interplay. Their interplay was what carried you through the script. And even if you watch the Lethal Weapon series, it's kind of an interesting, the first three, Lethal Weapon 1, Lethal Weapon 2, Lethal Weapon 3, interesting examination into story, tonally, and also you get to Lethal Weapon 3, which I don't think, it didn't really work because the script was not solid when they started making the film. But it's very interesting to look at these and see what works and what doesn't work. And that's why I think if you're ever going to be a writer, it's important to really study. The great thing is you get to study your favorite books. Why are those books your favorite? What about them made them resonate with you? Same is true of movies. What movies did you like? Why did you like them? Then you can start really doing it. If you want to be a writer, a screenwriter, or a novelist, you take your 10 favorite books and you do deep dives into those books and you figure out what is it about them that you loved. And what's interesting is that hopefully you have a story to tell that is different than those 10 books or 10 screenplays, but you'll be informing yourself with stuff that you already like. So that's always a good thing. And yeah, but I think that great stories are more important now than ever. And yet telling great stories is probably harder now than ever before because everybody wants a surefire formula. How is it that we're going to make this? How is this going to work? And how are we going to make money on it? We can't take a chance. I mean, this story's too out there. But again, as I've always said, Hollywood never, ever made a lot of money following a trend. Hollywood makes money setting trends. And if you're not doing that, why do you want to get into the business at all? At least that's how I see it. But yeah, and that's why, I was watching Mayor of Easttown, and that was an original project that was written specifically for the screen, and I thought it was quite good. Really, really, really enjoyed it. So on that note, I have a letter from Joey Cologne, and Joey says, "Hi Rob, my name is Joey, and I wasn't sure the best way to reach you, so I thought I would give this a try. I was wondering if you might have any advice for someone like me who wants to work in the film industry. To be more specific, I'm an aspiring film editor, but I have no film school, and from what I've been told, you don't really need it, but I still don't know the best way about getting my foot in the door. Anything you could say to point me in the right direction would be extremely valuable and appreciated. I thought you would be a good person to reach out to since you work in Hollywood. Well, I don't wish to take up any more of your time. Thank you for taking the time to even read this. Longtime fan since AMC Heroes, Joey." Well, it's a good question, Joey. I mean, there is no path to success, no, in the entertainment business. My only suggestion to you is that work begets work. That's what I have discovered. And now, if you want to be an editor, if that's truly your path, you have to edit as many things as you can. Now, it depends. Do you want to be a feature film editor? Do you want to be an editor on television? What is it you want to edit? Do you want to edit documentaries? I think being a good editor, you can do all of those things. But, of course, if you're editing narrative, if you're editing television and features, if you're editing stories, that is different from documentary editing. And there are things that you need to learn. Now, my suggestion is there isn't really a place to go where you can become an editor. But you know what you have now more than ever? You have more ability to... everyone has editing software, hell, even on your phone now. So what I would suggest to you is start editing up a storm. You need to start editing things and show people that you're an editor. And the only way that you're going to do that is by editing stuff. And I'll tell you, when Peter Billingsley and I started Summerlin Entertainment after we finished Arcade, we did anything. We looked to do local commercials. We worked for the Department of Transportation here in California. We did anything and everything we could and learned about editing. And we started making stuff. And one thing led to another. We edited, produced, and directed music videos. And we edited industrial videos. And what you have to do is you just have to start working. And you might think to yourself, well, I don't have anything to edit. What am I supposed to edit? Go shoot your own stuff if you have to. Or find filmmakers. There's lots of people that are doing work locally. Film editing is something that it takes a long time to get into. I mean, I started editing movies. I was editing my Super 8 movies, literally cutting the film and taping it together. I had my little reel to reel, and would look at my films, and I just started. And there's a lot of things, a lot of resources. I would read Walter Murch's book In the Blink of an Eye. I would read Eisenstein's book on the 5 levels of montage. Really start studying studying editing. I watched a brief Thelma Schoonmaker video today on YouTube where she talks about editing with Martin Scorsese, and it was quite fascinating. But you just got to start cutting. And I think the thing that I started with was my own films. Even if it's just you start doing tone poems, you go out in your neighborhood or wherever you live or in your city and go start shooting stuff. Make little montages of your neighborhood or something like that. I mean, and then cut them together. I don't know how far along you are in your editorial career, but that's what you need. Whenever you have an opportunity to go in, people always want to see the work. They always want to see what you can do. But other than that, I mean, an editorial career is almost willed into existence. It also helps if you can team yourself up with a director and work with them. I don't know if you know any of them, but it's hard to give that kind of advice out because there's no real, I mean, editorial is so specific, and I would say the easy answer is go edit. If you want to become an editor, go edit things. That's tough. So it's not that tough really. But yeah, so I would suggest doing that. This one comes from TJ Splaney. Greetings, Rob, and my fellow imagination connoisseurs. This will be a fairly short letter, I think, compared to my last few diatribes, but I'm writing today to ask you about your relationship with a newfound hobby of mine, Gunpla, or Gundam plastic models for the uninitiated. About a month ago, I somewhat randomly realized I'd finally developed the patience for model building and decided to dive headfirst into high-grade and real-grade Bandai kits. I've built 7 so far, with 2 of them still in the painting detailing phase, and I'm absolutely hooked. With your well-documented obsession with scale models of starships and action figures alike, I was wondering if you'd ever built any Gunpla. Also, do you have a favorite Gundam series or a favorite mobile suit? What are your expectations and desires for the recently announced live-action movie with Jordan Vogt Roberts at the helm? Jordan Vogt Roberts at the helm. As always, thank you for bringing this community together and being forever metal. Yes. Well, good question, TJ. I'm a huge Gundam fan, and yes, I do like Gunpla. I like bigger models, so I'm a Perfect Grade fan. As a matter of fact, I can't wait to get that RX-78 Perfect Grade model that is sold out. The first part's sold out, but everybody's raving about it. I've watched so many videos. I can't wait to get it. But yeah, I like so for those of you who are wondering what Perfect Grade is, Perfect Grade are the large, well, there's other larger scales, but there aren't that many of them. So Perfect Grade is a scale of Gundam model that's 1/60th. And it's usually about this big. And my favorite, you're asking my favorite Gundam is probably the new Gundam from Char's Counterattack. Char's Counterattack was a movie. It's set in the Universal Century, and that's one of my favorite Gundams. I also like the Gundam from Endless Waltz, Wing Gundam Endless Waltz. I love that Gundam with the feathers. And there's a lot of other. I really like Unicorn Gundam too. Yeah, but those are some of my favorites. And I'm a fan of Turn A Gundam. I wish they'd make a Perfect Grade Turn A Gundam. But so Gundam models that are 1/60th scale, usually you have to build an inner frame and then you have to put the armor around them. Now there's lights and all kinds of things. They're very cool. I've got a couple of them around here. You'll be able to see them later because I'm going to, not today, but the Robservatory is almost where I want it to be, so I can shoot here and show you some of the things that I have. But there you go. Gunpla is a lot of fun. And, it's for all skill levels. So I'm glad you got into it. I'd love to see, send me pictures of your work. I think that would be great. Nick Clark writes in and says, Dear Rob, greetings to you and all the members of the Post-Geek Singularity. I was just watching your episode 696 of Robservations, in which you espoused your love of Amelie. I, too, love that beautiful film, and it has stuck with me these many years. I come to you today with a recommendation for a series on Apple TV called Ted Lasso, My God, have I heard about that. When I pitch it to people, I would describe it as Amelie meets Major League, but with English football. It is a wonderful series and shares some of the heart of Amelie in the character of Ted, who is an American football coach now tasked with coaching soccer in England. He has an infectious positivity that makes the show one of the best shows to come out in years. Certainly the best comedy. It's made by Bill Lawrence, who wrote the brilliant Scrubs and Cougar Town, but it's a departure for him, as it is less absurdist than those shows were. I love this show, and since Season 2 starts in July, this is a great time for anyone to jump on board. I highly recommend it to anyone who wants some comedy that has genuine warmth. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Hope you and everyone in the Post-Geek Singularity have a great day. Well, I have to tell you, Nick, that a lot of people have been telling me about this show. I've been hearing a lot about it, and Elizabeth and I were watching it. I've seen the first episode recently. She finished the damn series, and I was like, what? So I've got to catch up, but I like where it was going. I can't wait to see where it goes. But now that you've described it as Amelie, I am so in on that. So I can't wait. Can't wait. So I will definitely, after you've said it, I'll report back. This next letter comes from Jean. Good morning, Rob. My name is Jean. You don't know me, but I feel I'm getting to know you. I discovered the Burnettwork just a few months ago, and I realized the Post-Geek Singularity is my church. I once was lost, and now I'm found. The world needs more like you, Rob. And since we're all becoming friends, I have a few getting-to-know-you questions I'd like to ask, if you will indulge me. Why, of course, Jean. Number 1, how are you doing? I mean this sincerely, not just as an imagination connoisseur, but the whole you. You burn the candle at both ends, for which I am grateful. I just want to make sure that overall you are feeling as awesome as you deserve to. That's a very interesting question. Well, on one hand, physically, I feel pretty good. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop when I'm going to suddenly have aches and pains in my old age. But for the most part, I feel really good. Physically, I feel great. And I was, during quarantine, I was drinking lots of beer and putting on the pounds. So Elizabeth she said, let's just start eating keto. And I did. And I don't know if you can see it in my face, but I have lost about, over the last month, about 20 pounds. I do drink on Midnight Metal, but during the week, I don't drink beer or anything like that. Because I was enjoying even drinking beer on the show, which I just stopped doing. It's amazing. You just start eating lots of protein and vegetables, and it just melts away. But that's always kind of been my metabolism, even as I've gotten older. But other than that, I'm a little antsy, to be honest, because the projects like Dota, Dragon's Blood Season 2, working on that's fun. But a lot of work was done preliminarily for that, so there's not a whole lot for me left to do. And I'm just looking for a new project. I'm looking for a new big project with Tango Shalom, and it's going to play in a movie theater with a real audience next week at the Brooklyn Film Festival, and it's going all over the place. It's going to Japan, it's going to Buenos Aires, it's going to Argentina, it's going to Spain, it's going to Australia, it's going all over the place. So that's really gratifying, but I'm looking for another big project. Both Dragon's Blood and Tango Shalom were long projects. I am flying up to Portland to shoot in August for more Crisis Medicine, which is the medical lecture series that I produce and direct. So that'll be fun. But for me, for my peace of mind, I always need to be doing something. I need a project. I need something to focus on, because I kind of need that. If you want me to keep talking shit about Star Trek, I feel like if I'm not doing something, like within the industry, like if I don't have a project that I'm actually working on that I feel in my own mind, I have to have something that legitimizes me coming on here to talk to all of you lovely people. And what that is having something coming out. Over the time I've started this channel, I worked on Crisis Medicine. I did Skyfighter, Lucas Kendall's short that Dust picked up. Then we were doing Dota, doing Tango Shalom. So all of those things, with the exception of Crisis Medicine, which we're doing more of, I need a new project. I need something to work on. I want to make a film. I want to either be editing a feature or I want to be directing a feature, and that's kind of why we were talking about starting the Raise Hellathon and raise money to make 3 movies. I mean, that would be. I can't think of anything better than having 3 of us, Dave Parker, myself, and the Pierce brothers. I don't know if we're actually going to do it because it's a tall order, but to try and raise money to make movies, and then to make movies, to make 3 movies in a year would be a dream. Dream. I would love it. And, so, but other than that, I think, I feel pretty good. I've always been a pretty happy person, and there's a lot to be happy about. I mean, I'm surrounded by all this stuff that I love, people I love, and stuff that I love, so it's great. The second question is, you live in beautiful Pasadena, California, yes? It's always in flux, but I believe our state is set for full open on June 15th. On your first outing without restrictions, where will you go to eat? Who will be going with you, and what will you order? Well, so many of the places that I go to are closed down. But, I would like to go to like a Beverly Hills steakhouse, like Cut or something. Take Elizabeth and just have a full-on, totally explosive meal with all the fixins, all the trimmings. And I will order a filet mignon. And I will order wine and probably a baked potato, which I know I'm not supposed to eat, but whatever. So, yeah. Or I do want to go to Vegas, and I did just send in my application for CinemaCon, so hopefully I would be going to Las Vegas with John Campia. And the last time I was in Vegas when we were at CinemaCon 2 years ago, so it'd be great to go back and see what the studios are unveiling. And now, the third question is UAPs. Unidentified aerial phenomenon from outer space or Antarctica. Well, that remains to be seen. I don't know if they're from. I want them to be aliens. I do. But I think, unfortunately, we're just going to find out that, yes, they exist and we have all this information about them, but we don't know what they are. And, let's just say they're aliens. I think that it's kind of like they might be studying us, but they don't really care that we're here. I mean, it seems like they're here doing some kind of examinations, but we're so far beyond their real interest. I mean, they're looking at us the same way we look at, farm animals. So I don't know. Maybe they're from bases in the bottom of the ocean. I don't know. But all I know is I want them to be real, and I want them to be aliens, and I want first contact to happen. I really want first contact to happen in my lifetime, because that would be great. This comes from Manuel Shaper. Or is it Manuel? Manuel Shaper. Dear Rob, greetings from northern Germany's beautiful city of Hamburg. This is Manuel writing. I've written it a couple times before. You might remember my 2-part letter about to be looked atness. Oh, I love that letter. To be looked atness. Or my reply to Willow Yang's discussion of the Tuvix problem. I'm glad to see how your channel has grown over time and enjoy the spin-offs, especially Midnight Metal. Someday I will try and join the on-screen conversation, yet it starts early in the morning for me, so I can only watch occasionally. So much stuff to watch, so little time. I wonder, how do you manage all of this and still watch movies and TV and have a social life off-screen? Do you have a clone for that? Nope, it's all me. I sure don't, which is why I have about 1,000 videos in my watch list on YouTube alone, and also have a list of movies, old and new, that I never got to watch, including some classics. So as I caught a cold last week, I had to stay in bed for a couple days, plus I was home alone for the weekend, and therefore I finally got the chance and mood to binge away some of those movies I've only had on my watch list. And I would like to share the experience and a couple of thoughts on just 4 of those movies that are, of course, a parade of fun science fiction and also horror, both old and new. So after years, decades even, I did watch the following movies: The Fly, Predator 2, The Last Starfighter, and Star Trek Beyond. And below I'm offering not in-depth reviews or full discussion, but my impressions and thoughts written down quick and dirty in an actual fever. In case you read this on the show, there will be spoilers for people who have not seen these. So here we go. The Fly. Believe it or not, Rob, I never watched The Fly. My lame excuse, I'm not a horror guy. So The Fly, surely a Cronenberg classic, a story about an ambitious scientist, a journalist, a romance, and a teleportation experiment gone terribly wrong. I don't know where to start since there's a lot to say about the movie, but I'll try and make it short. I guess it is impossible nowadays to not know what The Fly is about, yet even though I knew major plot points in advance, watching it now in 2021 was a wildly entertaining and also unsettling experience. I totally get now why I wasn't allowed to watch it as a kid, and my mom said no and I wanted to. Why is it so good? Many reasons. It has great pacing, a great cast, a great set of characters, and I particularly liked Jeff Goldblum's performance. He had the task to portray the character of Seth Brundle, who turns into a human fly chimera over the course of the movie. It must have been hard to act in that kind of costume and makeup and deliver a convincing performance. From a movie-making standpoint, I found the slow transformation of Brundle to Brundle Fly excellently executed within the movie, and even though the makeup and special effects, like Brundle walking on the ceiling and walls or his mean acid attack on Stathis Borans, are not super convincing by today's standards of photorealistic CGI, this doesn't diminish the quality of the movie in the slightest. I really love the intense, characteristic score and overall vibe of the movie, and that it is not just body horror, but also a drama based on the character's development and interplay. And there's a lot of funny detail and original ideas, too, like the insect politician speech, or Brundle Fly's body part collection in the bathroom cabinet. Was that his penis in there? And also, the baboon is hilarious in a way I cannot explain. My favorite scene? After the teleporter accident, the film takes its time to show how Seth Brundle gets up and does some physical exercise topless, which is such a subtle and surprising way into the slowly evolving weirdness of the horror theme of The Fly. I love that movie. Just one mean question. Why did Stathis Borans, having the intent to kill Brundlefly, go to the lab with his disassembled Browning shotgun in a case, and then went on to assemble it there, instead of assembling it in the car or at home and enter the lab well prepared? Shall we leave it at, well, he's probably not Hitman material? I don't know, man. What do you think? That's very funny. I never thought about that. I think probably he just hadn't done it before. So because he's a company man, he carried it like you would carry anything in a briefcase, and he would only take it out when he got to wherever he was going to be. He didn't think about building it beforehand, and maybe he didn't want anyone to know what he was doing. So when he got out of the car, he wouldn't be spied with a gun in his hand, even though that turned out to not be a very good plan. Predator 2. I watched the original Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger as a kid at the age of 13, when I really wasn't supposed to be watching a movie like that. I've loved it ever since, and it sure was great in many ways, some of which I couldn't grasp at a younger age, and I always knew that there was a less popular sequel with an urban setting that I never got to watch, even though I saw the Alien and later Alien vs. Predator movies. So now I found it on Disney Plus, and I went for it. It was clear from the start that this was something else. I liked the premise of the movie. The Predator creature messing with drug cartel wars in LA, going from an actual jungle to the big city. But I could not take it seriously because the gangs are portrayed in a very comic book-like way, using racial stereotypes and showing them as evil maniacs and mystics. The whole first act with the shootout was so far out there I had to pause and laugh it off with my sore throat and hoarse voice. Not in a mean way. It surely was fun, but it also made clear how this movie should be enjoyed. Ironically, I guess. For anyone interested, go ahead and watch just the first 10 minutes. What cracked me up the most was when Detective Mike Harrigan enters the rooftop with his gun trying to secure the area, pointing in different directions, almost tripping over his own feet in the process. It would make a great gif. Turns out that all the characters are more or less standard for a movie like this, and there's little to nothing in it that one wouldn't expect. The pacing and overall plot development is good, with the final act wrapping up everything quite well. Arguably the best sequence in the movie is the subway scene, where the Predator attacks the wagon, the lights go out, and the claustrophobic shootout starts in the dark. Nice action and visual execution there. Love that. Another remarkable scene, the Predator creature taking its time, using the bathroom of some apartment to do some first aid on itself after it crashed through the wall, and cracked me up. It's a little silly, but it's cool that this film just does something like this. I don't think a contemporary movie of that kind would have a scene like that. I also like the whole concept of a top-secret agency trying to capture the creature in an attempt to study and possibly weaponize it. While this is a common trope we also saw in the Alien trilogy, Weyland-Yutani, anyone? It really felt in the right place here, probably because the film is from 1990. And altogether, this film is probably as early 90s sci-fi action as it gets. I like how movies like that are fun by integrating silly stuff like the bathroom scene. The gags are often more implicit than explicit jokes, if you know what I mean. I feel like they dare doing some stuff that is ridiculous and admitting to it openly. Final thought to come to a close on this one. The major plot point of there being an alien creature behind the brutal attacks is no surprise since it's a sequel to Predator, and the movie also doesn't try and repeat the whole mid-film genre switch. I wonder if such a switch would have worked in this setting if it hadn't been a sequel to Predator and came out first instead. What do you think, Rob? I enjoy Predator 2. I know that there's a longer version of it we never got to see, and I would love to see somebody doing maybe a restored version and add the stuff that was missing. But it's very much a Joel Silver production of the early 90s, very much so. But there's a lot to like in it. As you said, it's very much of its time, and it's a fun sci-fi action movie, and it's cool to see the Predator hunting people in a city. The Last Starfighter. I asked my peers for recommendations, and one of them sent me a link to this one, which is on YouTube in HD and full length, wink wink. I went on and watched it with zero expectations, and it got me in a very feel-good nostalgia kind of way. A movie about a young man from a poor background who gets recruited to fight against evil forces in an interstellar war. Where have I heard that before? Wow, what an amazing movie. Simple 80s sci-fi goodness like I never expected to experience again. It's fun, decent action, a little drama, and a hero's journey of a sympathetic guy named Alex. Sure, you might say it rips off Star Wars in some ways, but it does its own and much simpler thing, I guess, and it does it well. The production design and some of the dialogue is cheesy, and many things in the movie are certainly goofy, but what can you do? Also, the movie is full with things that break verisimilitude, yet it managed to keep me aboard regardless. The CG is amazing for the time, and though it's lacking in realism, it nicely connects with the arcade gaming theme of the whole thing. Especially the first space travel scene with the flying car of Centauri, played by Robert Preston, accelerates through space. Still looks pretty good today, if you ask me. On the other hand, some of the practical effects are absolutely great too, like when the Beta unit, Alex's robot doppelganger, is shown briefly in a state of pulsating metamorphosis. Reminded me of myself laying in bed and watching the movie. All in all, I can't really pin down why I liked The Last Starfighter as much as I did. Maybe it was just nostalgia. I read that it has a lot of fans. I read that it has a lot of fans, and it's kind of a cult movie. And given that, I can totally imagine someone making a terrible and soulless remake of it today, and I hope this won't happen. What a joy the movie was. Favorite moments that cracked me up. At one point in the first act, the whole trailer park community gets excited and gathers to watch Alex Rogan break the record on an arcade video game. Yeah, right. It's so silly, yet it's so touching. The Starfighter recruits turn around all at once when Alex is introduced to them. Why is this funny? The reptiloid alien navigator called Grig shows a picture of his reptiloid alien waifoid that looks exactly like him, except that she's wearing a feminine dress. I almost fell out of my bed laughing. 4. You could easily miss this. In the final scene, the protagonist says goodbye to the trailer park community right before taking off and heading back into space. While doing that, he also says goodbye to his mother so casually I laughed out loud. Like she's just someone from the community he knew. Hey, Mom, good to see you. I'm leaving forever to join this interstellar starfighter unit as a combat pilot. Quick hug. Okay, bye. This was so silly, but still the final scene had me in tears. What I find so special about The Last Starfighter, everything that you might say sucks about this movie is so easily forgiven, and it's just great, no matter what the irritating element is. I find it interesting how it manages to do that. What do you think, Rob? I suspect that the awesome score by Craig Safan might have had a big role in holding it all together. It's so good that I would recommend this movie for the score alone. It's on YouTube in full length and good quality as well, by the way. Yeah, I mean, how do you not like The Last Starfighter? And again, look, that cheesiness, you know, that you delight in it. We delighted in it when it was new, and back in '84 when The Last Starfighter came out, I think we all went and saw it and loved it because it was total wish fulfillment. Hey, all the time I spent playing this video game, it was really just it was a practice session for when I get to fly a real starfighter. But I think it holds up. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's really interesting hearing your opinions on these films that you're seeing for the first time. Star Trek Beyond. Oh my. I've been a huge Star Trek fan since I was a kid, but I can't stand the new shows at all. For many of the reasons, most of which you've pointed out so well several times on Robservations. Like you, I didn't like Star Trek 09 and Into Darkness, which is why I never even bothered watching this third installment of the reimagined Trek universe. But then I heard several times that it is the best of the three, and that it is the one that is most likely to appeal to traditional fans, which might be just another way of saying that it sucks, the least of the three, but okay. I kind of liked it, but wow, it still has all the issues that most of New Trek has. It wants all the visuals and big moments without building up anything to get there. It relies on spectacular violence and action and some sort of evil opponent. Everything is over the top and just too much. Everything is in your face all the time. By that, I don't just mean the fast-paced action scenes where you can't really tell what's going on. I also mean things like the Yorktown station design, which is too out there for me and doesn't seem very functional or necessary to me either. It doesn't look like a futuristic Trek design, more like something taken out of the MCU or Valerian. I hate this anything-goes approach that is inherent in modern Trek, if you know what I mean, but I digress. Ooh, we park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay about that. At several points during the first act, I had an impulse to switch this movie off. Like this one. Hostile vessel swarm approaches. Kirk gives the order to raise shields and go on red alert. Doesn't the red alert imply that shields are raised? Don't know where I got that from. Should be standard protocol, but okay, maybe that always wasn't the case. A minute later, the Enterprise is, of course, once again spectacularly destroyed, and I already pointed out above when I think of those things. Kirk is then informed that they lost the navigational deflector dish, and he gives orders to warp jump the Enterprise out of the situation. You probably know what I'm getting at, Rob. Yes, I do. You can't warp without a navigational deflector. After I left the diehard Trekkie in me behind, I got over those things, and as the movie approached its second half, I enjoyed it more. I didn't even mind the motorcycle and Beastie Boys stuff. Seeing the crew working together to solve problems creatively was nice, and the villain turned out to be much more interesting than it seemed initially, but I have to admit I didn't understand why he turned into an evil guy. What his rationale was, whatever. I think the reimagined Enterprise A we see at the end of Star Trek Beyond was an improvement over the reimagined NCC 1701, but no match for the original Constitution class refit we saw in the old movies. What'd you think of it, Rob? I hated that. I've hated every ship design in the J.J. films. I loved all the ships from the old Trek movie era, the Oberth and Miranda class, and man, do I love the Excelsior class. I think the Excelsior is the most aesthetically pleasing and graceful starship design of all time. I hope they never go and redesign it in future movies or shows. It already went wrong once in Star Trek Generations, and it can only go wrong. Why change something that isn't already perfect? Just teasing you, Rob. I know you don't like the design, which is something I'll never get. Maybe that's a topic for another letter. To come to a conclusion, I thought that the movie was fun to watch, and I totally share the view expressed by some people that it is most watchable and likable of the new ones, but I'll probably never watch it again. It was almost a good, satisfying, and authentic Star Trek film for me. The difference is only about 25% here, if you know what I mean. Also, rest in peace, Anton Yelchin, to whom the movie's dedicated. Such a shame this actor had to go in such a tragic way. So that's it, Rob. Thanks for reading my letter, and sorry for throwing this much stuff at you at once. It was a fun experience watching those movies for the first time and writing it all down to kill some time while being sick. Best regards to you and the Post-Geek Singularity. Stay healthy. Manuel. Well, thanks for writing in. I love hearing from people who are discovering these classic films that I saw first run when you go back and you watch them for the first time. I really do love to hear about all of this. Oh, now this letter is fantastic. So, we've all come to love and know on this channel, have we not? Well, for whatever reason, over the weekend, she starts talking, or maybe it was last week, she starts talking about the movie Millennium. Now, the movie Millennium was based on a John Varley story, and it came out in 1989, and it stars Cheryl Ladd and Chris Christopherson. It was directed by Michael Anderson, who directed Logan's Run. I went and saw this movie on the Fox lot when I first saw it, and I like it. But boy, is it goofy. However, it's certainly it inspired like X-Files episodes and stuff like that. So, has written in a review of this movie. Hello, Robert. Yesterday, during one of your broadcasts, you asked members of the PGS to name some of their favorite sci-fi films. I knew right away Millennium from 1989 would be a sci-fi film on my favorite list. The film stars the chic and sexy Cheryl Ladd from Charlie's Angels, country music superstar Chris Christopherson, Robert Joy, Brent Carver, Al Waxman, and Daniel J. Travanti. The movie is relevant because it poses the questions, what do we do when we see unexplained phenomenon? Does humanity deserve a second chance? And it also makes many of us ask, if given the chance to start your life all over, again, to be with the one you love, would you? We're introduced to Bill Smith, an NTSB investigator who performs highly technical analysis of plane collisions and crashes. The gravity of these accidents is dramatized in the film, and though the nature of the disasters is as complicated as the reports generated to explain them, were presented many times during the film with unexplained phenomena. Smith declares that every crash is unique even when challenged by prominent physics professor Dr. Meyer, who studies unexplained phenomenon and who manages to find his way onto crash sites to do his own investigations. While Smith was thoroughly prepared for the press and naysayers questioning his regulatory abilities, he was not expecting to see the mildly erratic and often entertaining behavior by flight attendant Louise Baltimore, who finds herself coincidentally bumping into Smith to chat him up. The lovely Baltimore picks up Smith, and this leads to the pair to an intimate encounter. The circumstances these two find themselves in lead to Baltimore asking Smith if he can just forget about work and spend time with her instead. Smith's sense of responsibility to his work causes him to turn her offer down. Merely seconds after leaving Baltimore alone in his hotel room, Smith suddenly changes his mind and returns back to his room only to find Baltimore is not there, and that the room looks almost as if Baltimore was never there. Even after his workday is through, Smith does exactly what any one of us would do, try and find out how to get in touch with that amazing woman he met the night before, but Louise Baltimore can't be found anywhere. Smith walks into the hangar where the wreckage is kept, and as the lights are being shut off, he notices something flashing inside one of the pieces of wreckage. It's at this point he makes an odd discovery that leads to him seeing Louise Baltimore again, who takes the object from him, but this time she seems to not know who Smith is. We now find out that Louise Baltimore is a time traveler from the future who runs missions to retrieve and rescue people on flights that will crash. While this is an altruistic gesture, it is not solely because they want to save lives, but rather save the human race from what will be an inevitable distinction or extinction due to a highly polluted world where they're dying and cannot have children. As the film progresses, we see what the toll of rescuing people from the past has meant that this futuristic society, despite its imperfections and uneven distribution of food and medicine, works together for the common goal and will do anything, even endure lethal time quakes, to retrieve as many lives as they can. In a clever twist, we are presented with the story of Smith and Baltimore again, but this time around from Baltimore's point of view. Here, the second time around really is as sweet as the first. As Baltimore sees it, we get a more in-depth encounter of the pair as they seem to be falling in love. Once again, Baltimore is not able to convince Smith to abandon the project, and once again, she disappears from Smith's reach. Smith takes pieces of the object he found and approaches the doctor solely because he has realized that he can easily speak to the doctor about unexplained phenomenon. When the doctor and Smith meet, they're able to put the pieces together figuratively and literally. Baltimore comes to retrieve the object that Smith and the doctor have tested, but to no avail. The event results in a time paradox, forcing Baltimore to return to the future in haste. Smith and Baltimore assist in sending those souls that were saved to a future beyond the gate. One of the most touching moments in the film, and perhaps my favorite part of the film, is when Smith says he doesn't care who Louise is or what she's done. All that matters is this moment. This moment they're together, and that there's no way he's going to a future beyond the gate without her. I love that this film did not make you have to keep track of too much for a time travel film, but it did make you wonder what the consequences would be in the case of fiddling with the past. I'm also still wondering what exactly lies in the future beyond the gate. Well, I find this movie to be, I think the production design of the future and the people that we meet in the future, if you know what I'm saying, and I know you do, is a little goofy. But the plot, I think, I often thought that you could remake this movie and have a little less goofy production design. I really like this movie. It's pretty goofy, but I really like it. And I like the plot. I like the idea that there are people from the future who are going on to airliners right before they crash, taking all the people out, replacing them with fake bodies, and taking them into the future to be the new saviors of mankind and to our polluted, sterile future. They're going to send us further, like thousands of years into the future where the earth has healed itself, I guess. I love that idea. I think it's great. And every time I'm on a plane and it's about, I think, well, if it's going to go down, maybe the people from the future will come and take me with them. So I'm a big fan of Millennium. If you guys haven't seen it, it's a really fun movie. It's been spoiled now by this review, but so what? It's still good. I like it. Colin writes in. Colin says, "Oh, hi, Rob. Sometimes you'll say something along the lines of, what are there, like a dozen people on this planet trusted to direct a major tentpole blockbuster? And by that, I believe you mean, hey, these CGI-heavy movies with massive budgets can't be trusted to an inexperienced person. It would be super easy for them to fuck it up, and then we're out a ton of money and time. Makes sense. In any branch of the armed forces, you work your way up. That said, I think there needs to be an asterisk next to your above quote. I can cite multiple examples of directors where the MCU is their first massive film. Let's take Taika Waititi, for example. When he pitched to Marvel Studios, His most recently released movie was What We Do in the Shadows. The movie's budget was around $1.7 million and grossed about $8 million. Thor Ragnarok's budget was $180 million and grossed around $850 million. Both budget and gross went up over 100%. If you want to argue that Hunt for the Wilder People, released during the production of Ragnarok, should be used, they're both about 35% increase, which is still a stunning difference in magnitude. So how can this be? How can a director be expected to bridge this massive change? I'm taking a bit of an educated guess here, but I believe there's an existing framework that has been set up. It's not completely different from television, where different directors come on and have lots of work to do with the actors and setting shots, but they don't have the entire world on their shoulders. You may know that Joss Whedon oversaw the creation of Phase 2 and that the Russo brothers oversaw Phase 3. That meant that Joe and Anthony flew to Australia to meet with Taika and presumably guide him through all the logistical hurdles before leaving him to make his movie. There are also dedicated longtime Marvel Studios producers that stay with the project from cradle to the grave. This is also in addition to the on-staff concept artists, stunt teams, and other people who know what their job is and how to do it. I believe this setup is freeing. When choosing a director, you're allowed a larger net. They're not trapped into hiring a proven quantity. It's a tiny bit like Moneyball, find talent undervalued by the system. I think it's exactly like that. None of this is to suggest that Marvel Studios are not careful. For both WandaVision and Winter Falcon, you did say Winter Falcon, the directors Matt Shakman and Kari Skogland each have over 50 directing credits. Streaming series are something new for Marvel, so none of the infrastructure would be there. Here's a little bit of Disney synergy. Peyton Reed directed 2 episodes of The Mandalorian, and Taika Waititi directed 1. They're both now using an iteration of the volume stagecraft in their Marvel Studios sequels. Well, Rob, that's about it. I'll leave you with this. I keep hearing that making movies isn't easy, and I believe it. Did you know that Iron Man had 2 different completed scripts? That meant it was Jon Favreau essentially writing his own movie, drawing from 2 different recipes. Here's the thing that made the movie for me. Favreau made it a joy to watch Tony Stark build rocket boots. And of course, credit goes to the Marvel Studios team for hiring him, even though nothing on his resume suggested he would be a traditional choice. Well, I'll tell you something, Colin. A lot of what you brought up are very salient points, and you're bang on the money. But I would say that directing a film doesn't matter what scale the film is. I think directing a good director knows how to direct a movie. It doesn't matter how much the budget is. It doesn't matter what the scale is. A good director knows how to direct. And what Kevin Feige has found is he's looking for people that bring that thing that he needs, which is, of course, character and storytelling. Because they know that, look, they can previs all the action scenes. They know the action scenes are something that they can do on their own, and they're going to work. They know that. They already know that. So in a way, you're right. It's like bringing in a TV director where you already have the infrastructure in place to make sure they can stick the landing. However, it does give a director like a James Gunn or the Russo brothers or Taika Waititi, they can come in and certainly knowing that, like you said, they're freed up from concerns about visual effects or action scenes. Can they be pulled off? Well, they already know they can be pulled off, which is a huge relief. And they can concentrate on the characters and the story. And after all, that's what you're looking for. Because in a way, they want these movies to be able to work without the special effects, without any of that. And that's what they're expecting these directors to do. If you strip away all the action, would these movies, could they still work? And I think that, I mean, obviously there'd be holes, but for the most part they would. Would they still be entertaining? And the answer is yes. And Kevin Feige knows because he does have his infrastructure built, yes, but the studios don't have that luxury. Kevin Feige already built his apparatus. He's already got the machine in place, and replacing it, you're very astute. It's just like working for television. But beyond that, Kevin Feige does expect the directors to put their own imprimatur on these movies. So they are auteurist visions, although they've got a backup. So, I mean, I don't think Thor Ragnarok would have looked at all the same or would have felt the same if anyone else directed it other than Taika Waititi. And that's what Kevin Feige is looking for. Great directors that are good to work with, that work synergistically with the Marvel machine that they have in place to get these movies made. And I think some directors are better than others. I liked Captain Marvel more than other people because I liked the cosmic nature of it all, but I think it was very by the numbers. I think that the one thing that the movie suffered from is it needed more of an auteurist vision. You know, I mean, I understand it tapped indie directors, but I think it needed it needed directors with more personality to bring to the story, but I still liked it. I did enjoy it. So, A Witham is here. A Witham says, maybe I'm waxing nostalgic, but I keep going back to Star Trek, the original series, in spite of having the entire series so memorized, I could act episodes out in my sleep. I have a lot of nerdy passions in my life, and I've since, long before it was fashionable. But I wanted to share my relationship with this remarkable little oddity that's become such a cultural phenomenon, and I think might even weather the recent abuses it's taken in modern media. So, my mother would watch Star Trek because she had a crush on Spock. We had a black and white TV at the time, but even so, the show fascinated me, which I found out the phasers were blue. It got me really excited. The setting, the stories, the characters, very much the starship porn. My love of the Klingon D7 made the opening of Star Trek the Motion Picture almost a religious experience for me, and I was even happy to see the original Romulan warbird in Picard, regardless of the show's problems. But what I really wanted to mention, and few people do, is the music in the original series. It haunts me to this day. From the dramatic drums to the orchestral score in Arena to the Jaws-like melody when the Constellation is going to its doom in the Doomsday Machine, it's distinctive, it's perfect, and it not only adds a lot to the show, I sometimes go back and watch episodes just to hear it again. I can't think of many other shows or movies which have music like that. I love music that fits a scene, and when I notice old cartoons matching a character's piano fingering to a song or the synchronized music in Fantasia or Bambi, that's enough by itself to make me feel attached. Good music and visuals won't salvage everything, to be sure, but they definitely enhance something that was good to start with. Alexander Courage is the only name I know related to the original series music. I'm wondering if you know any others. Well, the Doomsday Machine theme was composed by Saul Kaplan. There's people like Fred Steiner, who wrote a lot. I'm a huge fan of the music from the original series, and to this day, in 2012, and my friend Lucas Kendall was responsible for this, all of the music from the original series, which was a holy grail for me, was released by La La Land Records in one box set on CD. It is, in my mind, the single greatest CD set that's ever been released. And I was there when the Beatles music was first. I was working at Silver Platters when the Beatles first came out on CD, and I know it's kind of silly to say this, but if you weren't there, you wouldn't understand what a frenzy there was in the world where people were buying CDs to get those Beatles CDs. Like HMV put out these LP-sized boxes with the CDs inside them. Man, we got those, and those were like, people were fighting the aisles over those things. So to get all of the Star Trek music, including music that is unreleased, unbelievable, is amazing. And when I put that on, because as a kid I've watched Star Trek original episodes at least 100 times each, it was so strange to hear that music, because even though I knew it so well, to hear it, it was the memories. I mean, the way it just, it was insane. Just absolutely crazy town. But if you like the music of Star Trek, track down, I think it's out of print now. Maybe you can still get it. It'll be the best money you ever spent if you like music. And A. Witham says, stay metal and rock on, which I definitely appreciate. Thank you. This one comes from Geo Diaz. I'm not sure how big a Superman guy you are, but since you refer to the 28 known galaxies in all your podcasts, I think it's a safe bet that you go deep on Superman. The new CW show, Superman and Lois, inspired me to write to you about the character of Kal-El Clark's Superman, and I hope you find it interesting enough to read and provide your thoughts. Well, you've certainly come to the right place. Here's your letter. Hey, Rob. I'm very impressed with the new CW show, Superman and Lois. I'm finding it to be some of the best Superman universe writing we've had in a long, long time. When it comes to fantasy, comic book, or sci-fi characters, I always find that Superman is the one topic that instantly turns into a long-form geek debate about characterization and writing. Comic shops, coffee shops, and the entire internet is full of people who think Superman is impossible to write for. overpowered, has no real physical conflict, has no internal tragedy, i.e. Batman, boring, etc. I disagree with all those points, but I concede that those viewpoints on the character have affected writers many times and has given us a lot of bad Superman content over the years. I've been in these Superman conversations so many times, I lay direct blame on Quentin Tarantino. Once a week, someone comments on my bad motherfucker wallet when I take it out of my pocket, and within 5 minutes, we're talking about why I disagree with Quentin on Superman. I guess you're referring to the Kill Bill 2 conversation. About 50% of people walk away from the conversation with a changed perspective. About 25% side with Quentin. 15% look at me like I need to take my meds. And I am still, in some cases years later, debating the last 10%. The new show has inspired me to write to you and to your listeners today and present my views on Kal-El Clark's Superman. The internet is ablaze with people loving the show, and I believe the writing team and showrunners are exactly in line with the way I've always seen the character, which makes me feel vindicated as a fan. I will save my thoughts on Lois Lane for another letter, but the show is also right in line with my thoughts on her character as well. So let me present my case and see if you agree. Kal-El Clark's Superman, nature versus nurture and identity. Kal-El is nature in its purest form. It is a name given to an infant, a blank slate, a product of the most highly evolved life form in the 28 known galaxies. Kryptonians are, or appear to be, the only life form to evolve in such a way that they metabolize and command the four basic forces of the universe: electromagnetism, strong nuclear, weak nuclear, and gravity. They metabolize different wavelengths of electromagnetism, they metabolize and can release radiation, and they can metabolize gravity for density, strength, and flight. I could write a whole other letter about their abilities, but I do not want to dwell on that part. Beyond natural physical evolution, Kryptonians also took conscious control of their evolution as a species through an ever-advancing technology for millennia. They evolved to such a level that the only thing in the universe capable of causing their extinction was themselves, and as the only universal constants are the speed of light and entropy, they had no other way to end than by causing their own extinction. In that inevitable conclusion to their existence, their greatest scientist made an insanely brilliant choice and took what he knew would be the last survivor of his species, and he intentionally sent it off to a world where that infant would grow up to be more than Kryptonian before him had ever even dreamed of being. So the infant that arrived on Earth came with nothing but its godlike nature. Clark is nurture. He was instilled with the type of values we all aspire to. He was adopted by a couple that could not conceive. I am a father myself with a stepson who I've raised since he was 3 and a biological son as well. I often tell people what the difference is between the two. My stepson, I never actually call him that, by the way, I love with all my heart and soul, pure, pure love. I love my biological son with all my heart and soul as well, 100% equally. The difference? There are times where I could just kill my biological son. Having your own face and voice argue back at you and sounding just like your own mother and father and making every mistake you ever made right in front of you strikes nerves in someone as an adopted child never could. I love that little shit so much, laugh out loud. Anyways, point is, I find older parents that adopt to be the best of us, and the children they raise are usually the greatest people on earth. Those children are often raised full of love. Their older parents are wiser than those of us trying to raise children when we were 18 to 30. I don't think I learned a single life lesson myself till I was 30, and the adoptive parents and children often hold their relationship sacred in the most beautiful way possible. That's very interesting because I was adopted, and my father was 16 years older than my mom, and my father had had children before. That's why I have a stepbrother and stepsister. Aside from values, Clark is a person, not an infant. He has interests: football, country music, barbecue, astronomy, nature, etc. Clark is not a god. Clark is the guy who shows up to help you move without being asked. He's the guy you get beer with to talk about your problems because you know he'll listen and will be honest with either his sympathies or the tough love you might need. He is just that genuine good guy I am raising my own kids to be, the guy that always has your back. Superman is an identity. The man that Clark would never use the nature in him, Kal-El, for anything besides helping others and doing hard work. Evil Superman, for example, is always a different identity than Superman. Evil Superman is either in Elseworlds, where he was never a Clark, or the death of Lois Lane kills Clark and creates a new identity as Evil Superman, much like the fact that Bruce Wayne died in an alley when with his parents when he was 8 years old. Batman was who was there when the police came and found him kneeling next to their bodies. Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, distilled all of this to one line perfectly. Superman is what I do. Clark is who I am. Now I say fuck way too much. Now I say fuck way too much. And I haven't been to church, besides weddings or funerals, in decades, but you have to address the Jesus thing when talking about Superman. The Jesus allegories are correct, but ironically, the writers that use that trope tend to hang their own issues with religion on it. If you take religion out and look at Jesus as a character or a person, he was God's son. God power, existence itself is his, etc., who was raised by a carpenter. Jesus washed people's feet, helped others, asked others to do what he did himself, and then flipped the tables at the temple and beat the crap out of those that took advantage of the helpless. Superman saving John Henry Irons is a perfect use of the Jesus trope. After saving him, John asks Superman, "How could I ever repay you?" Superman just smiled and told John, "Just live a life worth saving," and flew away. We have a lot of bad Superman, in my opinion, with him floating, looking down at everyone while speaking, with a tortured soul in need of saving, with him stalking his ex with her new husband in their home. The only thing more annoying than emo Superman is a writer thinking Superman is not fast enough to have jumped on an exploding bomb in the middle of Congress and just take the hit. Hell, he literally could have ate it while it was detonating, took Lex to jail, stopped to save a cat from a tree, and he'd still been back in time for the senator to have finished her sentence. You make beautiful images, Zack Snyder, among the best in cinematic history, but there was a reason Jimmy Page never sang. Stick to the images, Mr. Snyder, and partner with Robert Plant next time. Wow. You would have made a jaw-dropping Harry Potter film. Superman and Lois is getting major buzz for many reasons, but the cornerstone to me is that they nailed my own personal Superman. Sorry, cheap Depeche Mode joke. I also think they nailed Lois Lane, but I'll leave that for my next letter. She's been the biggest victim of bad writing in the Superman universe since Superman Returns. Ouch. I hope to hear your thoughts on my character take and on the new show itself. Episode 7 is the latest episode as of this writing, and I cannot wait to see where this show is taking us. Until then, Geo. P.S. Who would win in a fight? Han Solo or Captain Kirk? Well, you know the answer to that, Geo. Come on, man. Kirk all day and twice on Sundays. Kirk would beat the shit out of Han Solo. Without his blaster, Han Solo is nothing. Flying kick. Come on, man. I think you're right about this. I agree with you. I mean, I think that Kal-El is nature, Clark is nurture, and Superman is the identity that the character puts on. I totally agree with that. And it is really hard to write for him from the reasons you established. This is actually a very good letter. You clearly have been thinking about this for a long time. I mean, I totally agree with you. Because, I don't think Superman would be Superman without Jonathan and Martha Kent. They forged him. They took what nature gave them and forged him into the man he was. And the man he was chose to become Superman. And so I agree with you. That Kal-El is the nature, Clark is the nurture, and Superman is the identity. I think it's great. What a great letter you wrote. I really enjoy this. Write in again. But I totally agree with you 100%. Yeah, I think it's great. What a great letter. On the other side, Emil Johansson's written in. Rob, I've been thinking. I recently came across Red Letter Media's review of Joker from 2019, and I really liked their take. I do like the Joker movie, but I've been trying to figure out why and what about it that draws me to it. I mean, it was pretty much a ripoff of Taxi Driver, and I get people complaining that it's sort of empty and meaningless. Another fascinating but puzzling question is also how the movie was protested by the left, but still had some pretty lefty political undertones, which seems sort of paradoxical. However, if I made the story, and I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted, and I was supposed to be similar to the Joker movie by Todd Phillips, I think this is how it would be. And I think my desire for this type of story is the reason I like the Phoenix movie, which I don't think is better than The Dark Knight, but still something that offered something I do like within a nice box of comic book adaptations, or at least loosely that. There is a philosophical issue that I did not come up with, but basically it's the question of what is a person supposed to do if this person cannot sustain his or her own lifestyle? Basically, what if your IQ level is lower than what even the military accepts, and so you're incapable of working and making a living wage? Some people might say you can be trained, while others don't think it's possible. Other people might ignore you and ignore the problem. I think the humane, most obvious solution would be to take care of these people, help them, but this is not as easy as it sounds. Can you, or if you are in this position, make people help you and still be a good person? If they're forced or guilt-tripped, then you fail at being humane, and so the entire premise fails? Can you argue that you deserve this help? How? Through taxation of the wealthy? What makes you think their money is yours to take? Can you argue that this help is beneficial for other people in society, or does it only benefit you? And then comes the scarier part, which is, what if you're not a good person? Will people see you as a victim? Or will the fact that you're horrible and vile, bitter and obnoxious overshadow the pressing situation you're potentially in? If they do help you, doesn't that mean you're the one that lives an unfair life? You get free money without doing anything for it? Of course, people have various different political motivations and opinions about this, but I don't want to tell people what I think is right and what they think is right and what I think they should believe through pop culture. The reason this issue matters is to make the villain relevant. Instead of making fun of the villain, as if part of the protagonist's agenda is also the important part of being a bully, I want to make the villains matter. They have something to say despite being villains. So what is the conclusion to draw? When a villain speaks with words that haunt you but is still not anything else than despicable, well, that's the real practical joke because there's no punchline. I do have political opinions, and this story that I'm pretending to craft might touch on political issues, but I don't believe it's my job to tell people right from wrong through popular culture, and I don't need to reflect my own opinions through it either. This is why I think I like the Joker movie, because it can be interpreted as incredibly political but doesn't really make sense. The villain has a point, but that's only his side of the story, and what does it say about humanity if as soon as we see a purpose to something, we want to justify that guy? Perhaps Batman has a different point. If touching on real political issues, the villain suddenly has a voice and is more relevant to the story than ever, but by still being a villain, it does not portray this point as something that you should tag along with, because it is not the purpose. Because is it not the purpose of at least some fiction to tell people right from wrong? That is my defense for liking the Joker. I hope you found it interesting. Well, Emil, I did find it interesting. I mean, I think all of your points are good ones. Like I had a problem with the Joker because it was so modeled on Scorsese movies, you know, and The King of Comedy and Taxi Driver being the two obvious ones. And I thought, in a way, it was almost too much. So, yeah. But I think you're right. But one of the great things about good movies is they make you ask these questions. I don't think there's any easy answers. The Joker just laid out a framework and showed you something. It's up to you to decide what to make of it. And I think that's what made it a decent movie and not just a rip-off. Not just, a rip-off of Taxi Driver. So, yeah. Anyway, let's see what you guys are saying today. I to be honest, I don't know. The first person here is Mazif Yada. Rob, you should check out the grittier, more realistic Phantom comics from the 1970s. Much better than the earlier campy stuff the movie was based on. The change is almost similar to what Frank Miller did to Batman. Oh, I'd look at those. Why not? Paul Gilmore and Twin Flicks became members of the channel. Well, thank you both. We'll have you on tomorrow. I haven't forgotten about you. I know I was going to get in touch. My schedule got all changed around, so I apologize for that. Roger H. sent in a super chat. It was probably a super sticker, so Roger H., thank you for that. Willa says, did you like gender swapping the characters of Stillwell and Stormfront in The Boys? As someone who hasn't read the comics, it's hard for me to imagine them now as dudes giving the roles that they played in the series. No, to me, that kind of thing doesn't bother me. I thought having Stormfront as a woman was great. Stillwell totally works for me. They still were well-developed characters. I have no problem with it. I know some people might. But, one of the things I think that people forget is that a lot of these stories are so male-oriented on the page because most comic book readers are still men. So, I mean, that's something people forget. All these woke, call it woke, I know we're not, woke is a derogatory term, but all of these social justice activists and the people that get into the comic realm and start writing, they don't realize that their audience is still predominantly male. And when you go in and you start doing these wholesale changes and you literally start attacking your own audience, then people get turned off. It doesn't bother me. I thought they did a really good job with the gender swaps of both characters. I thought Stormfront was great. I'm sorry that, well, maybe we will see her again. Who knows? Brandon Sheehy sends in a tip and says, Rob, I'm worried about the potential success of the Highlander remake. To me, Highlander has that quintessential 80s quirkiness a la RoboCop and Total Recall. I could not agree with you more. I dread another gray, lifeless reboot where the edges are shaved off to appeal to a mass audience. Brendan, I was talking about this today, and we're having a conversation on Thursday on Midnight's Edge with the Critical Drinker in the morning, I think at 11, our time, or Pacific time, which is exactly the same thing. I agree with you. Highlander is such a product of its time. I mean, then, you know, the other movies weren't great. The show was good, though. And the show had less of that 80s sheen to it. But I was talking about that day. I'm like, do you play it straight? I mean, part of the greatness of Highlander is how over the top and operatic it is. And the Queen score just added to it. I don't even know if there's anybody that exists today that could write Who Wants to Live Forever and have it work the way that song works in the original Highlander. I honestly don't know. So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, Henry Cavill's great. I mean, even when the guy takes off his shirt, I'm like, that's fucking impressive. He's a handsome dude, and I'm certainly not beyond recognizing that. But again, he's a great choice to play Connor McLeod, but what are they going to do with that story? How are they going to contemporize it? Are they going to make it more straightforward Game of Thrones-like fantasy? But then it kind of the over-the-top nature of what Highlander is. Here we are. You know, we are princes of the universe. I mean, come on. We don't have that? That's not fun. That's a bummer. And I don't know how they can recreate that. I mean, I was talking with people that are like, yeah, you got to use Queen again. You can't use Queen again. You can't. I mean, you could, but you really shouldn't. That wouldn't work. So yeah, but I agree with you. Brendan also goes on to say, Rob, what are your thoughts on Executive Decision, directed by Stuart Baird? 1996 felt like a solid hit back then, but seems to be forgotten now. Yeah, it's derivative and is basically Die Hard on a plane again. Yet I like its slick 90s silliness, and that shock death still gets me. I like Executive Decision. I think it's a solid studio programmer. I like Kurt Russell in it. I think it's good. I really enjoy it, and it's certainly well made. And yes, the shock death and who it was. I mean, you know what? For however goofy that person gets later in life, I will always give it up for that, for allowing that part to be played. That was awesome. That was awesome. So, loved it. Sends in a super chat. Thank you. Thanks for your letter, too. Love it. Valiant Renegade says, I miss great writing. The perfection of simplicity and purity. Now it's all about social messaging and lecturing. Creators aren't creators anymore. They're abusers molesting franchises for politics. Valiant Renegade, I don't disagree with you. I mean, just tell me a story, man. I don't know if these people even can. It's certainly, I wonder when I watch Star Trek, I'm like, have you ever watched Star Trek? Like really? Like, have you? Because it doesn't seem like you really have. Which is really kind of a bummer. I don't know why. I mean, just tell us a good story. And what they're doing is they're ruining the franchises. They're ruining the current shows that they're working on, and they're ruining the whole viability of the franchise moving forward because they're tainting these great legacies, and it's really kind of gross. Gross. Jonathan Aldridge sends in a super chat and says, I was considering on training to become an archivist, but I'm not sure if I should because more original source material should be online. Well, I don't know, Jonathan. I think archivists are something that you need. I mean, people need that. What we desperately need is curators who can tell us to go through everything that's online and save us from all the bullshit. I mean, we need archivists that really know their shit and know what they're talking about. So I think the world could use you. Nick Paris says, "What's up, Rob? So I think the only movie that is more entertaining than anything that came out in theaters or streaming is the AMC stock mania. Rob, the stock is now $38 a share, and banners are flying all over Florida beaches promoting AMC stock. I love it. I wish I had bought it. I wish I'd bought it when it was like $2 or $3. I knew it would come back. So I think it's great. Let them buy the stock. I love how the everyman is now getting into publicly manipulating stock prices out in the open. It's genius. I love it. What a world we live in. Fantastic. Torrin Atkinson says, Fiend, I sent a letter May 25th. You said you'd read it live, but I've watched daily and haven't seen it. Can you check? Also, the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival interview still planned. Yes, how it's going to work is I'm going to announce the semifinalists tomorrow, or there's a possibility I might have to wait till Thursday. And then the semifinalists, and then Elizabeth and I are going to have a special Whining About Movies where we have interviews and we announce the winners of the categories. You should stay tuned, by the way. Just saying. So there you go. And on that note, I am going to bring an end to Robservations episode 699. The next episode is 700, where we're going to wrap up the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival, amongst other things. So, I've got a lot of great interviews that are coming together, but I think I'm going to end up saving them for the 800th show, probably, because people just were too busy. They couldn't get back to me, which was kind of a bummer. But, yeah. Jonathan Aldridge sends in another super chat and says, how would an archivist be that if the original source material can be interpreted by anyone, including those that might know what they're talking about? Well, I think the important thing, if you wanted to be an archivist, you have to curate everything and make sure that what's there is genuine. You know, you have to provide through research and things and all that. It would be up to you to make that call, and you would be the one giving all this information to scholars, saying or people that wanted to whatever. Here's what's legit. Here's what we found out, and you should base your opinions on these things as opposed to these other things, which you shouldn't. At least that's how I see it. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it. And if it's something you want to do, if you're really passionate about it, find a way to do it and make it work. I think it's important. And on that note, I want to thank everybody for their generous support of the channel via tips and super chats. I want to thank my moderating staff, Joshua Levesque, Darren Seeley, Justin Toner, Louise X. Sparrow, and all of you beautiful people. Thank you all for doing what you do. I want to thank Mike Bodden and the Richard, and I want to thank everybody for supporting this channel any way they can, even becoming members. So I appreciate all that. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to everyone, have a better day. Yes, I would.